So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Andy. I've been spinning wrenches on bikes for approximately 30 years and been in the industry here or there. I've been a bike mechanic, of course. I've been a tour guide, I've been a bicycle messenger, I've managed bike shops. I've been a pro mechanic, a traveling mechanic for both teams and independent racers. And of course, I've been working here for the last couple of years. So over that 30 years, I have a very broad range of knowledge. I've worked hundreds of volunteer events, to where I've done, the neutral support for Ironman triathlon, mountain bike race. I did my first gravel race last year. I've been in the pits at world championships and help assist athletes on podiums. So I have been doing it a very long time, and over the years I've developed kind of a methodology and a way of doing things that makes me consistent, helps me be thorough. So that way it helps set me up for success, and so in turn I help other people set up for success. And so I'm hoping to impart some of that to you guys. I'm going to be hitting you hard and fast with a lot of stuff. Feel free to ask questions. If I feel it's going to bog me down at the moment, I might just follow it up at the end. Some things are a TED Talk all in their own, so I might just touch on it, and then that will probably be a follow-up class. If there's anything that you absolutely want to know about in depth, email us, text us, message us on Instagram. Let us know, hey, I want a clinic on that too, and we'll work on getting it in there. First thing I do is consistently, I always start at the back of the bike and I work towards the front of the bike, because most of us, usually this area right here is where our point of contention is, right? We can put up with a lot on our bikes, but if this is not working, it drives us all like, right? So start at the back of the bike, work your way towards the front of the bike. So if I'm physically looking at the bike, what I'm doing is I'm inspecting the tire, making sure there's no lugs missing, make sure there's no weird deviation. I can do this right here, just use my finger as a point of reference to make sure my rim's not out of true. And this is where you're gonna see stuff on the sidewalls. Ideally, you wanna start with a clean bike. Cleaning a bike is definitely a TED Talk in its own right. But I will tell you, don't be afraid of water. Water is okay, light spraying, no heavy spray, no power washing. You will damage stuff on the bike. But light spray, I know there's a lot of bike washes out there. I personally love Dawn dish soap, Dawn Ultra, Dawn Platinum. I've used it in a machine shop before. I use it extensively for washing bikes. It degreases, but it doesn't leave a residue on your plates you can ingest, right? Same thing, it will not leave a residue on your bicycle. Is exactly what you want. You want all that stuff off there, you don't want it to affect your brakes. So Dawn dish soap, or our other go-to is, if you're gonna clean your bike without using water, this stuff. So that if you got your bike tuned up and it comes back looking beautiful and shiny and good, Bike Lust. It's basically a silicone polish, so with the wheels off, I can wipe the frame down and just wipe the dust off. And then what it does, it also helps protect the frame. Anything that gets on it sloughs off really easy. It hates your brakes though, so don't get it on your brakes. Even I'll go so far as when I'm getting ready to spray the rag, I turn my back to the bike and I spray the rag to make sure I don't get overspray, because you definitely want to keep this stuff off your rotors. So when you're inspecting your tires, the pen light is mightier than your eyes. Imperative for inspection of your bicycle. Point of fact, I know it's a little dark in here, but even in broad daylight, if you look, that's a halfway decent looking tire, right? There's some scuffs and scratches on it, but if you look, now I can start to see, let me find the one, I hit the one section, see the dry rot? With the light, and you'll see me do it in broad daylight, doesn't matter, high noon, especially somewhere like the brakes. I can look down and I can kind of get an idea what's going on here, but if I hit it with the light, I can absolutely see the meat of the pads. So quick, fast, makes your life much easier, so always have a good light. So inspecting the rim, spoke tension, usually you can do it by tone. You don't have to, yes, you should have a tensionometer if you're doing like stuff professionally, but if you just want to verify, usually it's kind of a nice kind of tone to it, right? A wheel that isn't tensioned will go punk. Now, bear in mind too, if they're all about even, you're about right. But you hear how the tone is different from one side to the other. That's normal because these spokes are shorter than these. The wheel is dished over the two dropouts and not the flanges. If you think the flanges are way offset because of this guy right here, right? So the wheel is actually this way. So these spokes are always shorter, so you're always gonna get a little bit tighter tone from your drive side. It is the reverse for the front wheel though, because you got the rotor on the front. But the concept is the same. You can kind of grab the spokes too. If they go, that's usually a sign they're not tensioned properly and you may want to bring it in and get it addressed. But again, something you can catch before you go on a major ride to make sure you don't damage your wheel. Next real important thing, make sure your derailleur hanger is aligned. And your derailleur hanger is a little piece of the frame Every manufacturer is different. There's some couple exceptions there, but generally most frames have something built into it that is an independent piece of your derailleur bolts into, and then that in turn bolts to the frame. And what that is to save your frame from being damaged and having to replace it, and hopefully save your derailleur as well. They're little $15 to $40 pieces. They're not expensive, but they're designed to die, so you don't mess up a $2,000 frame or potentially a $150 to $400 derailleur. And as you can see, this one right here, this was a garage, just a light fall in a garage, and it tweaked this one. And this is what it's designed to do. It's designed to bend, to save your frame. You really want to eyeball this, because this, and some of you have probably seen this, if you don't catch this and it's very bent and you go for a ride and you shift it up in that largest cog, if the derailleur cage gets sucked into those spokes, and then it'll rip the derailleur off. Best case scenario, just your hanger dies, but I've seen plenty of it where the derailleur gets mangled, the wheel gets mangled. The absolute worst case scenario I've seen is the derailleur got ripped off, grabbed by the spokes, and cracked the frame. Very important to see, but the nice thing is it just takes you a second to just look down and sight, and you can actually see whether or not your hanger is straight. Imagine this is your cog set. Now, in a perfect world, your derailleur should be sitting completely in line with your cog set as it goes across its width. You're going to see with the bent hanger is all of a sudden you're looking at this and now it's interpreting this way. That's also one of the things that causes your gears to come out very frequently. 75% of all derailleur hangers have been out in the world. People thought I'm nuts. It's true. 75%. It's a brand new bike in a box. Chances are it's bent. If you've ridden Zen, your derailleur hanger is bent, and that's just the nature of living out here. So you want to make sure that you literally just have to sight and draw an imaginary line through that cog set, on that cog, and then through your derailleur. So when I'm looking at the stand, what I'm literally looking at is just this orientation here through that top pulley wheel, and I'm drawing an imaginary line through it to make sure that it's straight. On newer 1x setups, they're asymmetrical, so this bottom wheel is not straight in line. It's actually slightly twisted, so always do your sighting off that front top pulley, because this will give you a false positive. But imagine when you're looking at this and everything is clean, as this is bent, you're going to start seeing this right here, and that's also why your gears kind of go rogue on you. It may shift well on one end of the spectrum, you get over the other and it starts going south on you. And more often than not, it's a bent derailleur hanger, or if you have cables, it's condition of the cables. But absolutely imperative you catch it if it's severely bent, because you do not want to suck it up into those spokes. So very important, but very easy to see. And I'm going to go ahead and set this, and you can actually see the chain. You guys want to take a look at that real quick and just sight that. You want to do it in the middle of the cog set too. You don't want to be on the end, because the derailleur kind of curls up into itself. So it's really hard to kind of see when the derailleur is all kind of scrunched up whether or not that is in a perfect plane. Whereas as it comes out and away from itself, it's much easier to kind of sight and see what's going on with it. So generally always be in the middle of the cog set.
So what's the easy fix?
There are gauges to adjust them. They're kind of pricey. I think they start anywhere from $40 and go up to $200. The best thing to do is either carry a spare hanger with you or have a spare hanger on tap, and then bring it in the shop with the other one, and we can true it up to the frame.
It's good to have and own a spare and leave it in on your person, in your mountain bike pack, in your garage, so that if you come to the shop and we're 3 days, 5 days out, manufacturer's sold out, you can get one ASAP. You can get on the road ASAP. Or if you're on a mountain bike trip, road bike trip, having one in your suitcase or whatever means you don't have to skip a day of riding. Wolf Tooth makes a pretty inexpensive and small mobile derailleur hanger tool.
On that, they're generally specific by manufacturer. There's the new UDH, like on this bike, which is a universal derailleur hanger, but predominantly they're not. They're usually by manufacturer. So just because you go to a bike shop, doesn't mean they have your hanger if you're traveling. So it definitely behooves you to have the hanger specific for your bike if it's not a UDH or something that's more universal. But 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have it unless you go to that specific shop that may have your hanger, carry the same brands. Cables, stuff like that, it's good to check the condition of them. They're not a permanent thing. They do go bad, and like everything, some things are better than others. So if I shift it up here to the largest cog, I can let the slack go without turning the wheel, and that will allow me to inspect the housing. And so generally almost any derailleur will do that. Front or rear will give you at least the opportunity to look at it to get an idea of condition. You'll see rust. You'll see it blown out. So it starts doing stuff like this. So this is a piece of housing I pulled off a bike. You see how it starts peeling away. The housing itself actually starts receding. It's just from thumb pressure. You're constantly shifting. It's hitting. It's peeling away the housing, and so now your cable is dragging across the top of this metal. And of course, you get rust in there. You get contaminants. The worst I've seen is that when cables get so jammed up, and you're putting so much thumb pressure into it, it will actually damage the shifter itself, especially on road bikes. You know, when cables are exposed in the bottom of the frame, sport drink would drip down the frame. It almost always accumulates right here, and then it dries in this hard cement, this sugary cement, and then people would destroy their shifters trying to like shift through that. So definitely inspect your cables, and that's absolute worst case scenario. A lot of miles, really hard, but it will affect your shifting. You'll feel it. It becomes inaccurate. It's not adjustable. This stuff is not forever. All right, shifting, chain. A lot of derailleurs nowadays have clutches, either externally accessible like the Shimano where it's got a little cover plate on there. They can affect your shifting. That's one of the things that we do is that any brand new bike or bike that we service, if it has a Shimano clutch, we're actually peeling it open, greasing it, and reassembling it. We do that for longevity of the shifter. It will actually make it seem like you have bad cable and housing when this thing is gummed up and bad.
I'm ready. I don't know what that is. What do you mean?
Well, they're starting to appear more on road bikes now too.
Oh, really?
But what this does is when you're kind of chattling down the road and the derailleur starts doing this stuff, it actually nullifies its ability to do that and kind of locks into position.
Oh, okay.
Ever so slightly.
It stiffens it up.
Yeah, so if you're running a one by setup, what it helps your drivetrain not to do is whip cord your chain off the front.
Okay.
Especially with road bikes like this gravel bike that you're seeing more and more one bys. Those are imperative. The Shimano's external, it's really accessible. It's one of those things that you can kind of QC yourself as far as if your shifting is going completely rogue, you know your hanger's straight, you know that your cable and housing is good, or if you're using electronic shifting, you don't have cable and housing, is probably dead on. If your Shimano derailleur or SRAM derailleur is acting up, or if this is sticking and you're seeing it not snap back, your clutch needs service. These ones are real easy. The SRAM ones are a little bit more entailed. They're built down into it, so 6 one way, half to the other. I'm not gonna say that one is better than the other, but I have had to repair both. Like I was telling
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can ask really quickly. So on a gravel bike especially, they're putting the clutches on there.
Absolutely.
And if you're going to change, like if you have a flat or something like that, you want to release that clutch. It gives it some slack.
Yep.
So you want to make sure you you re-engage it. If you don't, then it will slap around a lot. So that's just an interesting side note of that clutch when it's on and off. And you'll know, you can hear it slap around if you haven't put it back and re-engaged it.
So for those who have been riding a while, you're familiar with that noise. On the Shimano, it is an on and off switch right there. The SRAM one isn't an on and off switch. It locks it open like so, so that then you can drop the wheel out of the dropout nice and cleanly, and then you go to re-engage it. That is under some spring tension, so watch your fingers. Bear trap. Brake pads. So rotors and brake pads. Like I said, you can look down and you can actually see the meat of the pads. You can, of course, hear if your rotor's hitting. What you're looking for is now the brands have a prescribed amount of pad material you're supposed to have back. Quick, fast, dirty as a general rule of thumb. You see this has a decent amount of pad here. There's a little bit of a lip on this one. So that's just bad location of the frame manufacturers. This is sitting a little proud. But practically speaking, when you're looking at the pads and the dropout, it's not just the pad material. Most manufacturers, you need to also take into factor this little spring here. And what you want to do is make sure that you're not getting into that spring and it's scrubbing your rotor, because then you're replacing a rotor as well. You can see when you're looking at this down in the frame, you just sight right down there and that's going to be installed. You want to keep that pad material away from that. The closer you get to that, the closer you get to the danger zone.
You'll hear it. You start to scrape and rub that spring and not the brake pad anymore.
Rotors themselves. Now there is a set thickness of the rotor that you're supposed to subscribe to replace it, and it's usually etched on the rotor somewhere. Again, the quick, fast, dirty rule, 1.5 on this one. Now I have a special measuring device that takes into account, and I measure it, and I can mic it. If you want to get high tech like that, you can, but you can see there's a lip, and if you feel that right there, you can feel the lip on that. So that's the actual material of the rotor. Now this rotor is to the point where it needed a replacement. But you can feel there's a real pronounced lip. Now you're not going to feel at the top because ideally the pad sits slightly over the top of the rotor. So it should, actually I'm sorry, other way around. The pad sits slightly below the rotor, so you want to watch out. Sometimes this top will give you a false positive because there is a lip here. This lower guy is generally a better tell. And yeah, when you see that start to develop, that means your rotor's getting there. Most rotors are solid steel manufacturer. The Shimano ones in specific are clad, so they're steel on aluminum. So you don't want to get through the steel and the aluminum because then you're damaging components. All right, chains. Is everyone pretty much familiar with why chains wear out, how and what it causes and what happens? Do you want to know?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So what happens to a chain over time and why it wears out is that the rollers themselves actually start losing material, so the roller gets smaller. The component that holds the roller starts to wear out. The pin that goes through that and holds it starts to wear out. And so what you have is an issue of stacking tolerances. So that's one thing that's happened. So in essence, your chain is kind of growing and it's losing its tolerances, so it's slopping around more. So the most accurate way, and I've studied this to ad nauseum, the most accurate way of finding out the amount of chain wear you have is by measuring across 100 links for length. No one has time for that. So they make really handy dandy gauges, but if you look at all the individual components of a chain, actually take that one more, you hold that. There we go. So all of these things are wearing out, and on top of that, the cassette itself, you imagine every time you're romping on that, you're crushing that thing forward, and it starts to wear material off of that, so then your distances actually between the teeth are wearing. I don't know if anyone has ever taken a new chain and put it on an old drivetrain and start skipping on those smaller cogs on you like crazy. What's happening is the chain will not sit down on there, so that's why it's beneficial to replace your chain more frequently and keep your cassette clean. So there's your roller.
Can you give us some idea in regards to frequency of chain renewal or?
Absolutely. You're going to trust your gauge. So yeah, this roller starts to die, so the chain will actually get less stiff. And if you take a brand new chain versus an old chain, they literally, if you hold them side to side, which is actually how I measure my chains up if I know the distance is good, the length of it, because I hang it off a finishing nail and I take my new chain and I just cut it, and the new chain will be slightly shorter than a used chain because it's actually growing across the span of it because all those tolerances. What happens to your cog? It's a lot harder to tell visually. This one's mostly worn, but you see that little sharp burr right there? And you can actually feel it. So you can actually inspect your cog set and you can feel those burrs. And it's only your smaller ones. The load is shared on your larger cogs. I think you have more teeth engaged, so it spreads out the load across your smaller ones, your 10s, your 11s, your 12s. Those are the ones that wear out because you're only grabbing a percentage of them, right? Because the chain's wrapping around. You're not getting a full wrap. On those larger cogs, you're getting much, so those ones rarely ever skip. But you can tangibly, when everything's clean, you can see, okay, wait, there's some little sharp burrs on this guy. All right, this might not take a chain.
So would it be beneficial to change out those lower cogs when you change out your chain?
Depends on what brand you have. The Shimano's you can, SRAM you can't. It's all one piece machined. So you can't replace those usually like this guy. But keeping this thing clean is beneficial. Keeping your chain clean, keep your chain ring clean, and then also when it gets to the point of replacement, replace it before it's too late. And as far as frequency, that really depends on the conditions you're riding in, right? It is not hard to clean a cassette. It is fairly... Now imagine this is something you're not going to do on the bike. This is going to be, you know, off the bike, have wheel in hand. My preferred method I use is, this stuff is my little helper. And I've been doing it this way for many, many years, well over a decade. DEFCON 5, if it's black, it's an extremely dirty cassette. I have a wire brush, Harbor Freight, cheap little guy, excellent. I'll start with that. And this stuff, this is Clean Streak. We sell this here. Like I said, I've been using it for a very long time. It's extremely effective. It's basically like a high-powered citrus degreaser in an aerosol form. What I'll do, and I'm not going to do it in here because stuff stinks. I usually do it outside. But I spray it as if I'm spraying through the cog set onto the ground. You don't want to spray it into bearings. Causes bad stuff to happen. But if you're just very lightly spraying across there, I'll spin the cassette, hit it, spin the cassette, and then I will come across and just do that. So I'm rotating the cassette and I'm using the free hub to get my cleaning stroke. So I'll do that, and it's only the absolute worst. I'll bust out the wire brush. Second step, if it's really bad, cleaning brush. Park tool, it's great. It's got this guy to scrape the nooks and crannies out the inside. Same thing. I might spray it another time and do that. And then the last thing I follow up with is a rag. Now I really like the ones from the auto parts store because they're very thin. And the new drivetrains, 12, 13, they fit really nicely in between the cogs. And so what I'll do is I will shoe shine. And when I do that, that's why when you get your bike tuned up, it comes back, the cassette is perfectly clean. So that's all it takes. Again, when I'm really rocking at it, this takes a minute. Same with the bike inspection, 5 to 10 minutes. Me explaining it, it's gonna take a lot longer. But once you get a rhythm for it, it's much, much faster and easier. Chains, when you are cleaning them, an e-bike, of course, you need to have the bike elevated. You don't have to have a bike stand. I know it's kind of an investment, but if you have anything that is an arm hanging out, if you have a tree limb, anything around that you can drape your saddle off and then secure it with a Velcro strap, something to help secure the saddle so that way the bike's up off the ground. And I just happen to have an e-bike in the stand so that you have to pedal forward on an e-bike, right? It doesn't pedal backward like a conventional bike. If you got an old bike, it doesn't really matter. When you're lubing the chain, number one you want to make sure is you're lubing the rollers. The side plates don't matter. It's just extraneous. Most lubes, especially dry lube, they have a detergent factor to them. So it's actually a cleaner and it's a lube. You want to wipe off the excess. You're going to get rid of that dirt that's on the drivetrain. Usually I'm actually pinching the rollers and cleaning the rollers themselves as I go. And then I'm going to hold and pinch the side plate. Same thing too, front chain ring. Pop the chain off if I can. Clean the chain ring teeth if I have to. Use a wire brush. Usually though, a rag, spraying that stuff on there, it just wipes right off to clean up. Chain rings, you'll see that they wear too. They're generally symmetrical. There's a little bit of machining and variation on them, but as they wear, they start to what we call shark fin. Because you think every time you pedal, it's jamming into that and it starts to shark fin, and so that's kind of your indicator that it's about time to start thinking about replacing your ring. If you do put a new chain on a worn chain ring, it'll make like a groaning noise, especially with the new narrow wide chain ring. So you're if it starts to abate, chances are it'll bed into it. If it's too far gone though, it won't go away. Under real hard load, it'll just make that noise. So it's just kind of telling you it's time for a new chain ring. Bottom bracket. You want to make sure that your bottom bracket has no play. Now this is an e-bike, so it's going to be a little bit different. I'm actually probably drop this on the stand here in a second and switch bikes. As far as cleaning though, while I have this in here, if you have a full suspension, I think it's absolutely imperative you keep your suspension clean. So ideally, after every ride, you want to wipe off your stanchions, the shaft, and then treat your suspension or your dropper post like a suspension component. You want to make sure that's clean too, because all of these have seals in them, and eventually those are going to get contaminants in them. And worst case scenario, that could mean a costly repair if you neglect it. You know, you go from needing fork seals to now you need a $400 CSU and lower because this is scored up and damaged because it's run so dry and gotten so dirty in there. If you got a road bike, not really a problem you have. But yeah, keep those components clean. I'm gonna switch bikes here real quick. Tires, actually I wanna come back to that real quick. I like absolutes. So is everyone pretty much run tubeless? Okay, so when you put tubeless sealant in, or even if you have tubes, I highly recommend it. It'll get rid of all little nuisance flats. So I've been using tubeless sealant on my kid's bike for 15 years to make sure that I don't have to go home and change flat. Works like a charm. But when it comes to tubeless tires, I like absolutes. So I like a device that tells me, has a measuring scale on it to tell me how much sealant I'm doing when I'm topping off tires or checking them. Point of fact, we have a customer whose well-intentioned husband would make sure that her bike was completely dressed for events that she was doing, so we'd always make sure dutifully top her sealant off. Make sure top her sealant off. Top her sealant off. End result though was that one of her tires was completely full of sealant. I kid you not, there was no room for air. It was inflated with sealant, and it was biased. So her front was completely full. Her rear had a decent amount, but not the same. So bike spinning in the stand, like doing this because you know, the centrifugal force of the balance is all thrown off. So I'm like, okay, let's dial that back a little bit. So knowing exactly how much sealant I'm putting in when I need to, I think is imperative. Something like this one's a little bit clearer. So it has both your cc's or mLs and your ounces. In general, road is about 2 ounces. Mountain, let's say gravel, I usually put about 3 ounces or 90 cc's. Mountain, you start at 4. Honestly though, this number here was kind of invented back in the days when stands was first came about, when everyone was running 26-inch by like 195, 20 tires. Now that a lot of people are running like 29, 25, 26, I'll fudge that higher to closer to 150 for a 29 with big fat tires. Everything is sharp and pokey out there. So the more sealant you have in there, some of that sealant is going to dry up and kind of stick to the tire and be dedicated to sealing the tire. So your volume is kind of like, you want a little bit extra in there.
Sealant can be taken out of a tire if it's been in for a year and it's all pooled up like in one spot and it's got that out of balance. You can open the tire and peel the old stuff out.
Yep. And
It's gross.
yeah. Dried sealant makes dried sealant, which makes dried sealant. So if your bike has sat over a season or doesn't get ridden that much, it doesn't hurt to pop the bead off. And this stuff, if you use an orange seal, it looks way worse than it is. It actually comes out really easy. It's not bad, but it will make more dried sealant. It is adding weight. So it does help to top that stuff off. Your valve cores get gummed up. That is a common thing of life. There really isn't a lot of ways around it. They're trying to develop different valve stems to help avoid that, but I think no matter what, things are going to do what they're going to do. The almighty spoke, one of my favorite tools.
That's a good idea.
So, spoke. It's exactly the right diameter to get down to the valve stem. It has the threads on it, so it's got a nice abrasive point. So if you need to kind of, you know, ramrod the valve core out and clean it up, you can. Also, it's a dipstick. So let's say you want to check how much sealant is in your tire. You put it 90° down, and then you kind of use a little bit of imagination. When you put that down in there, you're going to figure, okay, you're going to feel you hit bottom of the tire, and then you're going to take it out, and you'll see sealant, the sealant level, just like checking the oil level in your car. Chances are, if you pop this up and you see some sealant in there, you're probably good to go, right? If you're up in the line. A lot of times, though, you do that, it's bone dry, like, okay, now I got to start addressing it. So, my little helper. Valve cores, don't get married to them. Where's my bad one? Oh man. Anyways, the cores themselves, this is a clean one. They get contaminated, they get dried sealant in them. You can't get it out. If you ever fight to get air in your tires, you ever have one that you're just like, oh, chances are it's this little guy, and it might be the valve stem. They're $3. Throw them away, get another one. We carry them in stock. It's worth having a couple around the house too, so when you need to replace it. I've tried cleaning them. I've tried doing stuff with them on the fly. It's hit or miss whether or not you succeed. So generally just having spares is always best. All right,
Are valve stems more or less standard?
No. But good valve stem companies like Muck Off, Wolf Tooth, they come with little rubber grommets that change the profile of the valve stems, because rims can either be very, very flat, they can be more half round shaped, or they can be very square. So if you take a round peg and you try to put in a square hole, it's not going to fit quite right. So you can kind of pick and choose which inserts will sit in the rim correctly. Very particular about that. Some of them are just, they don't fit right. But good ones, they're more universal, so you can't get the one to make it fit absolutely right. Also, just so you guys know, and I see this a lot, when you air up your tires, let's say you put a brand new valve stem, you've done a new tape job, that's a TED Talk all its own, especially. You will tighten the valve stem. It's not against the rules to take a wrench and put a little English on it and tighten it down. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna air it up, and because the air pressure is gonna push that valve stem down out of the rim, you'll find it's actually loose now. So you might start losing air out of there. And so I've seen that happen to a lot of people. They're like, it's leaking. I can't figure out where it's leaking from. Maybe I have a puncture. A lot of times it's that little guy right there. Just gotta give a little English, tighten it back up again. You're usually good to go.
Let's just call it an Andy talk and get a series going.
Bottom brackets and bearings. So we did tires. So with the 1x set, I've used some 2x. It's fairly easy to drop the chain off and you can check it. You want to check bearing play in a couple different clock positions. You want to make sure you don't want to grab the pedals because the pedals will give you a false positive. They have bearings in them as well. They have a little bit of free play so they spin smoothly. So if you grab here, you'll feel like you might think, oh, my bottom bracket, but no, it's pedals. So make sure you grab the crank arms. This is really important. If you're racing and trying to get high performance, you want that glassy smooth. And you don't want to be able to hear the bearings. So if you're racing, you're going to be losing power and more than you would think if you have a bad bottom bracket. You can kind of hear motion of things, but you're not hearing a worn bottom bracket. You will hear the bearings. Most of the time you don't want to hear your bearings. That's usually a bad indicator. If you have super high-end ceramic speed bearings, you will hear them because the grease in them is really, really light and it makes this almost like kind of whispering noise. But a bad bearing, you will hear it. It's imperative to catch bearings, and people don't realize the things it'll do because when they start to wear, usually they develop play. Play turns into Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch. So if there's any bit of momentum in there, it's going to hit every time you ride. It's going to hit, and then the span increases, so now it has more distance to increase that hit. And so then what you start getting is wear in your components. So I've had to replace many crank arms before because the spindle itself is worn out because steel versus aluminum, usually the spindles are aluminum on the higher end stuff. Steel is always going to win. So the steel of that bearing will eliminate the tolerances on that bottom bracket. So no matter what I do, I cannot get it tight again because the actual aluminum is scrubbed away. So that's why it's good to catch stuff like that because it can damage something much more expensive. So even if you're not racing, stuff like that can cost you money. Same thing with hubs. Hubs kind of do the same thing. A quick inspection of a hub, I'll give you a non-dirty side so you guys can play with that. So you can feel when you have the wheel out of your bike, you can inspect it and just check it, just spin your axle. Now some hubs will give you a false positive because the axle caps float. So I've had it where people have taken these and they're like, oh, this spins perfectly smooth, but if you take it and you actually push them in together and turn it, and all of a sudden you're like, because you were just spinning the axle cap on the axle of the hub and not actually touching the bearings and feeling the condition of them. And in that instance, actually the axle was completely locked up. So the hub was just rotating on these axle caps. Same thing, parts are wearing out, things are getting damaged. Not good news. So this, you have to think, if you feel a little bit of roughness, you have to imagine that, okay, a little bit of roughness in your fingers, that's one thing. Now you're clamping it into a frame at anywhere between 10 and 16 Newton meters, being crushed into that frame. And then you take your body and you sit your body on it and you're loading it. So a little bit of grinding nastiness usually interprets to a lot of nastiness when you're actually riding the bike. Again, you're slowing down. It's not gonna happen immediately, but eventually you're gonna start wearing out components and damaging them. If you feel this one, you're gonna feel it's glassy. There's resistance because there's grease in there. It's like a hydraulic resistance, but it's not ticky, right? It doesn't have those
Right, it's
indentations in the bearings.
It's not sandy.
Correct. I feel it's glassy smooth. That's okay, cool. My hub's in good shape, but make sure you press both axle caps, turn them to kind of inspect them. You'll get a false positive if you just do it one-handed. Drivetrain, cockpit, bolts, stuff like that. I think having a torque wrench is absolutely imperative. If you're going to be doing a lot of your own bike work in some fashion, even if you don't have a torque wrench though, throwing a wrench onto your bike to just know if it's tight or not is a good thing, right? I'm just going to put a little English on this, it doesn't move, okay. You should be good. You know, something like a crank arm, usually the torque specs are etched on them. So okay, 40 Newton meters, that's a lot. So I can put a little bit more English on that, but stuff like inspecting your cockpit bolts, making sure that, okay, I'm not getting a good turn out of it. I put a little bit of English on it, all right, it's probably okay. You get one that you just put it on and you go, like, oh, okay. And then you should get them all checked, all inspected, but just quick, fast, dirty, just put a wrench on it, check it, okay, no motion. Hoods, these love to come loose. Not against the rules, give them a little bit of push and pull to make sure that they're not moving on you. That's something that when you're riding, you don't want to have one move on you. Save your grips, grab your grips on your mountain bike, throttle them. You're thinking a hard hit, you're gonna move those, so you wanna make sure they don't move on you on a ride. Any accessories, make sure everything's battened down. Same thing, front brake, you're going to inspect, make sure brake pad's good. Tires, same thing, good. Spin it. I don't hear bearings, nice and smooth. Rim's not out of true. You can also check condition of bearings for some instances. If your hub is really loose, you can actually get it to flop a little bit and you'll feel it kind of tick in the dropouts. And that could be one indication that your bearings are going out. And you can feel that in the bike. Headset, yeah. Headset you want to do on the ground. So number one, you'll feel when the bearings are going bad. Same thing, it'll feel grindy, kind of like that bottom bracket I passed around. You'll feel indentation in the headset. You'll feel it kind of grind around. If it's loose, when you're on the ground, you want to grab the front brake and you want to rock the bike and push. Imagine if you're trying to anchor that touch point of the tire on the ground, you want to try to pivot the tire off of there. And when the headset's loose, you can actually feel and see this move. I always put my hand on it because I might feel it, but I won't see it. And sometimes I see it and I won't feel it. So to double down, I always put my hand right there and you actually feel the components move in your hand and kind of shift around. Again, that's one of those things that can cost you a lot of money if you don't catch it, because usually a lot of your forks, even if it's a suspension fork that's aluminum, every time it's taking an impact and is damaging that steer tube, that's potential of having to replace it. Carbon fiber fork, very expensive. You don't want to mill that down and damage it, because you also don't want that to crack on you on a ride. So always make sure your headset's in good condition.
Real poor handling with a loose headset.
Yeah, even a tight one. Yeah. Although,
Chunk.
yeah, you'll audibly hear it. It's hard to catch sometimes. On the trail repairs. So if you're running tubeless, what is holding the air in your tire is magical tape. This is pretty much universal and unilateral. There is tape in your rim to help hold the air pressure in with the tire seating on there. When you're using one of those plug kits, it has a real nasty needle on it with an abrasive side of it to kind of clean it up. Just be careful when you're using that you don't puncture a hole, because then you're walking again. The other thing too that I've noticed, you do have to be kind of cautious with your tire levers. So this was my old favorite. This is an old favorite for a lot of people in the industry. The Pedro's ubiquitous tire level, extremely durable, lifetime warranty, love it. The problem is if I use this, and I'm usually using this side to peel a tire out, right? But when you go to reinstall, you flip it. Well, now if I break what I call the 90-degree plane when I'm putting a tire on, I'm going to scrub and I'm going to puncture that tape if I'm muscling on a really difficult tire. So you have to be careful for that. So stuff like this tire lever with abbreviated nose on it, I can cam way farther over before I even come anywhere near that. Buys me some time. I don't know of a good portable one yet. I haven't found one. Personally, I'm not against chopping one of these down to be able to carry it with me, but you lose the ability to hook it into the spokes, so you can use two. Some tires are easier to take off than others, but something to think about. Ideally, when you're putting a tire back on, try not to break that 90-degree plane. It'll just set you up for success. Most chains, or all chains pretty much now, have some sort of master link that you can carry with you to fix a broken chain. You have to have some means to take the bad chain out. Road, honestly, I usually don't carry chain tool. If you break a chain, usually that's honey, come pick me up. I'm done. Mountain bike, that's a little harder because you may be out in the sticks. Gravel riding, you may be out in the sticks. So the ability to reattach a chain is what separates us from the animals. I have repinned a chain before using a crescent wrench and a rock. I don't recommend it. It took me an hour. I was extremely stubborn. I did not want to walk out. Ever since then, I always have a multi-tool with a chain tool. This is one of the things you can fake a lot of things on a bike, can't fake a chain tool. So make sure you always have a chain tool with you. Regardless of how it looks, these little guys are great for your home toolbox. They don't take up a lot of room. If you're traveling, they're great. Again, doesn't take up a lot of room if you're going to the races. This tool this tool and my other one all do the same thing. Okay, it's like a little $25 tool. This might be like 40, 60. It's a $200 chain tool. They'll do the same thing. This will only do it for so long though. Looser tolerances, inexpensive tool, eventually it's gonna wear out. Same thing, this is more of a commercial tool we use in the shop back there. This was my Christmas present. Don't look at it. But they all do the same job. Stuff like this will happen to you out there in the world. Yeah, very subtle. See that link right there is twisted?
What? Where? What?
That one right there. So if you look at it, the
Oh,
two sides
yes.
are actually
Okay,
twisted
yeah.
up. She did not do anything wrong. It was off a gravel bike. Her chain is not measured worn, but anyone's mountain bike, this is kind of point of fact of life. Shifting under load, jamming up a hill, having to run and gun on the gears, stuff like that will happen. It might cause next rotation around to throw that chain off that chain ring because it's not sitting square anymore, and it's also helping wear things out. It's not good, you got to get it out of there. But this, you get skipping, weird stuff going on with the derailleur out in the field, you have to get that out of there, right? You don't want to damage your components trying to get home, so you want to pop those links out of there, and again, that's where a chain tool is going to basically make it possible for you to do that. Good habit to get into. It's not imperative, you know, 110% that you're going to be putting a master link in. Usually you can throw the pin out, you don't care. But if you ever have to cut a chain shorter and take more than one link out to just get yourself back home, if you put the pin all the way out, you will not get it back in there. And that's what I'm talking about. That is almost impossible to do. So I'm going to just, see how the pin is starting to come proud? I'm gonna back that off and I'm just gonna take a look at it and try to get it apart. Okay, cool, popped apart, and see where it's got that little bit of a lip on there. So now imagine I had this in the bike, I can take out the bad links and now I can put this in here, wedge it in, and then put my chain tool back on it and force that through. If that little guy's out there, good luck getting that in. Not a good day, but a good thing to practice on an old chain. Try to take that out of there, figure out what the point is where I need to start inspecting it and looking at it to get it apart, so I can put it back together. Master links, oh shoot, I didn't grab a pair. I highly, highly recommend you always carry nitrile gloves with you. They're small, they go super compact, they're not gonna take any room up. They're handy to have, heaven forbid you have to do first aid on a bike ride, but I've had to do it a lot, so it does happen. So that way you can glove up. The other thing too is if you need to manipulate and handle your chain, you won't ruin your gloves, you don't ruin your bar tape, you don't ruin your grips, you put your gloves on, do what you need to do with the chain or anything else, and then you can pop them off, throw them back in your bag. So really imperative to have, and they don't take up any room. They're always in my pack, I always keep them. They're just in the back right now. So yeah, gloves will allow you to be able to handle the chain. Let me find them. Are most of you familiar with master links? Measuring your chain for wear. Like I said, the most accurate method is taking your chain off, measuring over the total length compared to a brand new chain. No one's gonna do that. Chain checkers though. My personal favorite is the Pedros. When you're measuring your chain, definitely look at the instructions of it because it'll tell you where the sweet spot is. Some measure in different locations than others. They're usually, if they're nice, it's etched actually onto the chain itself. And what you do is you just set your chain checker. So what I'm doing is I'm loading it to make sure I'm getting those tolerances to stack to tell me what the condition of the chain is. This little guy's great because it has your go little shelf. It doesn't go in, go. First shelf, no go. Uh-oh. And I've seen chains so worn that it won't touch the other side, and that's oh no. And that's usually a whole drivetrain replacement. But again, if you get into that first slot, that kind of tells you, okay, I need to replace my chain now so it doesn't accelerate the wear later. It's a good indicator. I've checked it against a SRAM chain checker because SRAM chains are a different dimension. The rollers are bigger. And so far it's been congruent, so definitely one of my favorite chain checkers. Mine's modified though. The stock one you'll see has tools on it. I cut it down because I want to sit flat in my box, but chains are relatively inexpensive, drivetrains are expensive. So keeping it clean really helps make that last. Keep your chain clean, helps it last. Chain ring. But definitely when your chain gets to the point of replacement, it's just time. Unless you're prepared to replace everything all at once, definitely change your chain more frequently. Any of you use plug kits for your?
Yes.
So those of you who don't know, if you've ever seen like the car plug kits to plug the tire, they make micro versions. So for both road and mountain, I'm very particular about this. I know they market this for both, but those are kind of monstrous to go on a road tire. So this is for me more of a mountain kit. That's actually mine. So this is from my mountain kit. And so if you see, they make these handy dandy little bitty ones. That's a little bit better for a road bike. So a little smaller one, so that way you can plug a tire rather than have to take it off the rim. You usually can address the issue even with sealant in it. If it's just the hole is slightly bigger than what the sealant can handle, or if it constantly, you know, each rotation just kind of breaks the sealant free and then starts leaking air again, this will get you back on the trail, hit it with the CO2, and you're back on without even having to take anything off. You don't have to take the tire off. I have some customers that have problems with their hands. They can't necessarily muscle a tubeless tire off a rim. Absolutely 100% carry one of these, so that way it'll at least get you home and keep you from having to make a phone call. That's pretty much it. You guys have any questions?
You were starting to talk about the Master Link. That's just
Ow! I couldn't find one. Boss man, can you go grab me one?
Yes. Do you have a tool there for a Master Link?
Oh, never mind. I found it. Aha! Yes, I do have Master Link pliers. So, Master Links. So if you look, chains have an innie and outie link. That's how I refer to it. So you see you got the outer plates, that's your outie, and then your innie is that guy. So generally your chain is pinned together like that. A Master Link goes in place of an outie link. So you need 2 innies. Now, depending on the alignment of the sun, the moon, the stars, the Master Link may or may not come out nicely. So some of them come out really easily when you put a little English on them. Others, they're on there. They are directional, so you see the little arrow.
Yes, okay.
So usually when I'm working on a bike, you're out in the field, right? You got your bike right here probably. You're looking at the chain coming down. So you want the arrow to go with the direction of the chain travel as you're riding. So your kidney is going to be this way. The Shimano one doesn't have this flat with a kidney, but it does have an arrow. So I would say that all Master Links are pretty much directional, or assume they
So
are.
is this a SRAM?
This is a SRAM one, yeah. And I'm putting on a Shimano chain. I know I'm breaking a cardinal rule. So what they do is they go opposite of each other. And you see how it's got a kidney cut? So you put them against each other like so, and then you're going to just do this. Now, this is not secure. This has a much, much nastier grab to it. So what I do after I get it onto a bike is I will, and they do make a tool for this, but if you're out in the field, you're probably not gonna have the special tool. So imagine I have the Master Link in this chain right there. So I put the Master Link on. I know it's not secure. I'm going to very carefully bring this around. Don't do it too fast because the Master Link's not apart. It will kind of blow apart and you'll just be back to putting it on. It's not a big deal, but it gets annoying. So when I have it at the top, all I gotta do is lock the brake really hard and just whap the pedal, and you'll hear it click into place, and you can inspect it and see that it's set into place. So you don't have to have a special tool to do that, and usually a little bit of English will put it onto there for you. Getting it apart, there's the fun part. So usually doubling the chain up on itself, use it for leverage, put them together and just kind of do this and work it. That's where the gloves come in handy, because then you're manipulating the chain, you're not getting them all nasty, and then when it gets to this point, it will pop apart. But this little guy is super handy to have with you, because if you break a chain, or like that damaged chain I just showed you, I would cut that out and I would put this in its place, and then I would be rocking and rolling again. And it takes minutes to pull the chain apart and put this back in there. Don't even worry about it. You're back on the road.
And how hard is it to actually get a Master Link apart with your hands?
It depends on your bike karma and whether or not you tip your bike mechanic. It is really hard to get those apart sometimes. Sometimes it is a fight. There are companies that do make little travel versions of this tool that will pop links apart. This is a lightweight multi-tool that you can bring with you. It has drivers in it. if you've ever tried to take one apart and you absolutely cannot do it, it would behoove you to get one of these and travel with it. If you've ever had luck, get one apart and you get some technique. It is possible to get them apart by hand, but sometimes some of them are on there, and it is a nightmare to get them apart. So that's where the actual tool comes in
So
handy.
you'd only have the master link on your chain if you have put it there, right?
They all have them now.
They all have
Oh,
one.
they all have one.
Any
You'll
bike
all have
you
one.
have,
Mhm.
you have to go back 5+ years to
Oh.
begin to find bikes that don't have them.
Yeah.
Oh,
So all modern chains now have a master link, so that's how your chain is put together. But that's why having a spare with you can save you a lot of heartache and headache on the trail. Because if you break a chain, you just pop the bad link out, pulling those bad boys on, and you're going. Because it literally, compared to like unpinning a chain, putting it back together carefully, lining everything up. Also, point of fact, when you pin a chain out in the field, it will be stiff. You're cramming the links together and they jam, and so it'll have a stiff link. That's what this little second shelf is for. So the first one is to remove the pin and to reassemble. The second one is when the chain is jammed together, it'll have a stiff link, and you put it in that guy and drive that to just touch it and peel it apart slightly, so then it free moves. Again, extra steps in time and doing things. If you absolutely have to, you're gonna need to. But those of us in the know, we carry Master Link with us. We just get back on the trail and go. You know, eventually, you know, I think 3 is the number. Once you got 3, or if you have Master Links really close to each other, it's time for a new chain. But you can kind of live with up to 3 of a new chain. For those of you with this, so this will never have a bend derailleur hanger. The frame union is also the derailleur union. This is all one piece, and this is kind of becoming the new thing with both road and mountain. What I have seen with transmission, though, if you have anyone, if you're ever with someone on the trail, doesn't look like anyone has it, you're all looking at it like magic. So what I have seen with these ones is because the derailleur is part of the frame union, when people remove their wheel for flats, tire repairs, I think it slowly loosens this up over time, because this is clamped to the frame. What will happen is the derailleur will go bank and it'll slam into the cog set, and the chain is flopping around because it's no longer tensioned. So what you have to do is you have to loosen this guy, you need to loosen the axle, and then you need to re-clock it. So you have to pull it up to the proper B tension point out in the field. I'm going to be honest with you, I use gauges religiously for most things. The B tension of the derailleur, the distance from this to this cog, is set in stone with every manufacturer. Some manufacturers like Shimano and the mountain derailleurs, it's etched on the derailleur. You can actually look at the back of it, put it there, and see where it's supposed to go. If you're out somewhere and trying to address an issue, 5 or 6 millimeters is usually your key point. And I can show you how to do that quick, fast, and dirty. And what I'm talking about is the V tension is the distance between this here and here. When it's too close, you'll hear it. When you go to shift on a larger cog, it's audible, it's nasty. It's not a good noise when you shift on a large cog, because you can imagine physically this is almost crashing into there and like doing that, like snapping across there. So this needs to be a prescribed distance away so it'll allow the chain to go out of there cleanly. Too far away, your chain is too long, it's trying to interpret across too far a distance, your shifting lever won't get quite dialed. So usually 5 or 6 millimeters, so you can actually use your Allen wrench as a feeler gauge and look, if I am 5 or 6 millimeters over, chances are I'm good. So that's all you gotta do. Any shift system, usually it's around that ballpark, between 5 or 6 millimeters, so you can just check it real closely, real loose and real easy with an Allen wrench. Make sure you got clearance there. So you can use Allen wrenches are great feeler gauges because they are true to size.